feces which could be smelled more than 15 feet away from the building. While walking around the property, all of the doors were locked and the window shades were closed, preventing the police from looking inside to inspect the condition that the interior of the building was in. He says, as I continued to walk the exterior of the building, the animals inside continued to bark and howl in a manner that he felt the safety of the animals were at risk. The dogs were making what he described as gut-wrenching sound that did not appear to sound normal. The report went on to indicate that a female had some contact with the police, and she advised that she had Jim on her cell phone, who was the owner of the building, and on the telephone. The female allowed the officer to use her cell phone to speak with the person, Jim. Once on the phone, he spoke with the person who identified himself as the defendant, James Ferrari. Mr. Ferrari stated that he was the owner of the 444 Water Street property. The dogs present in the basement were his. Mr. Ferrari advised the dogs' living conditions were satisfactory and their safety was not at risk. He stated there were 4 dogs locked in cages in the basement of the building and that they had plenty of food and water. The officer indicated that that would be best for him to respond to the building and to show the police and the animal control the conditions in which the animals were kept. He indicated that he was at Waltham at the time and would take over an hour to respond to the location. The officer determined that this was an emergency situation and for the safety of the dogs, and there was certainly a risk as far as that goes. So he was able to enter the rear door of the property with a crowbar and hammer and force the rear door, causing as little damage as possible. And then the officer went on to describe the conditions that he saw as follows. Went on to describe that once the rear door was open, the odor was present over 60 feet away from the building. The health inspector arrived at the scene and was updated on the situation. As a result of the air quality in the building, the Fitchburg Fire Department had to be notified, and they responded to the scene with their ventilation equipment in order to circulate some fresh air into the building. And then it says, as air was being circulated throughout the building, I was able to walk around the first floor area. Several areas of the building are located large piles of feces pushed into corners of the building. A large plastic container was also located on the first floor, which was half full of feces. I also located on the first floor a small room, approximately 8 by 8 feet, with a small doghouse. A large pile of feces was also pushed in the corner against the wall. He described the basement area as metal chain link cages with 4 pit bull dogs inside. The cages were approximately 4 by 5 feet and went almost all the way to the ceiling. 2 dogs were kept in separate cages, while 2 others were kept in the same cage. The floor area was covered in urine and feces, and it was obvious that it had not been cleaned in some time. The temperature of the basement was well over 90 degrees while present in the basement. All of the windows were completely blocked, which prevented any light from coming into the basement. He was not able to turn any lights on to the basement or any other area of the building, and believed that at this time there were no working electricity in this area of the building. As a result of the odor and conditions that the basement was kept, they had to vacate the building and obtain additional breathing and exterior hazmat garments. The report goes on to indicate, and this is the relatively comprehensive summary of his observations. This is Sergeant LeMay. Based upon the amount of feces and urine present in the basement, it appeared that the makeshift kennel cages had not been cleaned in several weeks. Mold had started to grow on most of the piles of feces in the cages. The dogs were walking around in urine and feces infested cages with poor air quality. Cages did have bowls inside, but none of them had any food or water in any of the dishes. All of the dogs were panting and appeared to be dehydrated as a result of the basement temperature and lack of water. He says, I was able to locate a large bag of food on the first floor along with approximately 12 to 15 empty bags of food in the basement, which confirmed his suspicion that the animals had been living in the basement for months. He attempted to, several attempts were made to call the defendant's cell phone number, but he never answered any of the police's calls. Several other officers responded to the area too, and one of them was Officer Michael Yang of the police department. There are several reports, but this at least is, I think, a significant observation of Officer Yang. He says, while in the basement, we observed about 4 dogs. We observed about 4 dogs caged in metal kennels. The kennels were full of dog urine and feces. As a result of the unbearable odor, Officer Hurley and I ran out of the building to get some fresh air. Judge, it appears as if the defendant certainly kept these animals in just terrible, terrible conditions. And under the circumstances of the heat, the lack of food, lack of water, lack of lighting, the Officer Yang's report also indicates that the dogs were later removed by animal control in the MSPCA. The defendant's record includes crimes, well, it does not include any defaults, it includes crimes of violence where he has been convicted and he has served some committed time on those matters, particularly 19 months. Middlesex Superior Court, he served on an assault and battery charge. I suggest to you, Judge, that based upon the facts of this particular case, the defendant, the potential for at least a recommendation of an incarcerated sentence is high, and that based upon the officer's repeated attempts to contact the defendant yesterday and their inability to do so, along with the defendant's record and just the facts of this case and the information the defendant provided to the police originally when they had him on the phone, and he told them that and what is reported in the police report, that the dogs' living conditions were satisfactory and their safety was not at risk. It certainly was inaccurate information. I would suggest that the amount of bail requested is appropriate, and particularly the condition that he had no contact with any animals.